Good morning to you, or good evening, wherever, whoever you may be. Here it is early, Monday the 29th of April 2019. My name is Timothy Halloran. I am a fellow inhabitant of the same planet, the same dimension as yourself, where we function within the same laws of nature. We respond to the same gravitational field. We are dealing with the same flow of time. And in these videos, we're talking about the nature of the times. So congratulations on making it through the month of April 2019. It has not been the most smooth and steady, slow period. And we're talking about a beautiful new moon in Taurus coming up May 4th. And there can hopefully be a little bit more settling down through this month of May. Now, this last weekend, the 27th, the 28th of April, Mars in Gemini has been squaring to Neptune. And there's been a lot to do. There's been many voices, many factors. That Mars has been busy the last few weeks. And that square to Neptune, that Mars can get lost in a tizzy. Yes, whether it be a blissful tizzy or a nightmarish tizzy or a feeling lost or so much to do that we get scrambled, or we can very well be dealing with a theme of lethargy or exhaustion. Yes, we're going to be talking about the real need to be cooling down and slowing down after this intense month of April. So mid-April, the sun in Aries was squaring to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which is the big astrological factor we've been talking about for months. We'll be talking about Saturn stationing retrograde in just a few minutes. So that square to Saturn-Mars, the last new moon in Aries, the last full moon in Libra, all squaring. That's Saturn-Pluto, a tremendous pinch, a tension of energy, inviting changes, important decisions. Now this next week we'll have Mercury in that square to Saturn-Pluto. The following week, the second week of May, we got Venus squaring that Saturn-Pluto pinch. So pay attention to the dates that we'll provide throughout this video. But this next new moon in Taurus is in a beautiful, harmonious trine to that Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Now wait a minute, what's this? You're interested in learning about the difference between a square and a trine aspect so you can begin to read the astrology yourself, going beyond sun, moon, rising sign, the zodiac, and the planets? Well, I've got the opportunity for you. Speaking of Taurus value, we've got an amazing astrological course rolling out this week. That's what I've been very busy with in April. This is a wonderful opportunity to be learning the gist, the meat and bones of astrology. So maybe, perhaps, you're interested in learning this deeper astrology. It's a very valuable course. There's a tremendous amount of information between planetary aspects, phases, configurations. So perhaps before running off and whether it's submitting articles to the New Age magazine or talking about astrology out there in the world, you may be interested in learning the real gist and depth of astrology. So again, that opportunity exists out there for those who are interested. The third segment of this course begins this week. Check out the link below for details. Okay, so I had to put that out there. I have been very busy this month of April, and I would like to start slowing down if at all possible. Now, this is a real intention and dynamic we can all be experiencing at the tail end of this month of April. There's been a lot of intense change, there's a lot of transformation, and there may be so much on the menu that we have to now slow down, partition, break apart, or close shop enough to be able to recommune with ourselves, fill up our own glass, and get back on track. This next week, Saturn is stationing at 20 degrees of Capricorn, the 29th to the 30th of April, exactly on the moon's south node. We'll talk about this in detail at the end of the video, but one of the dynamics that this can present is there's so much transformation going on in the world. An economic, government, agricultural revolution, and there is too much to know, to predict, to form and structure and do all these changes all at once. And so part of this Saturn retrograde is the breaking down of societal expectations, pressures coming from the outside, authorities, our work, our job situation, to take it all a little bit more flexibly with the grain of salt so we can make these changes in the bigger picture perspective that allows for this recourse in a way that can be quite healthy and quite harmonious. Again, this last week in the 27th to the 28th, with Mars squaring Neptune, we're really looking at our energy, our willpower, and our sharing and dissemination of knowledge with other people. Again, so much to do, so many faces, so many voices, so many activities. Mars is very, very busy. Mars is also our physical energy, our physiological nature, our sexual desires, our sexual nature. We're really looking at how are our goals lining up with our actions? How is our willpower aligned with our dreams? What sacrifices have we made in the past? How are those things aligned with our goals, our visions, and our individual nature? Where have we made sacrifices that may have caused reactions or repercussions in terms of our sexual, physiological nature, etc.? A big looking at our physiological nature, with Mars also coming into an opposition with Jupiter and quincunx Pluto the same day, this coming weekend, Sunday, May 5th. Now, this is also a huge opportunity for us to take a look at what we've been learning and how we are sharing what's interesting to us with our friends, our peers, with other people, to share our own truth. Maybe it is an awareness of our own body, our own physiological nature, or maybe there is a wisdom of nature, our life, or simply our own interests in general. And this is a time where we can be sharing and connecting these things with other people and seeing what that knowledge is and how that sharing process is. And again, there can be really looking at our awareness of our body, of our physiological nature, because our physiological nature is also changing throughout time, as well as our understanding of it. The diets and prescriptions given 10 years ago are very different than the diets and prescriptions given today. So there's very much this looking at how much energy have I been spending, where am I getting exhausted, why am I getting exhausted? And this goes very deep. It may not simply be, oh, I've been, a construction worker and I need to go to the gym and work out, or I've been working out too much. What conversations have we been having? What emotional relationships have we been having? What kind of work are we doing? What kind of creative work do we want to be doing? There's really this creative tension to be looking at these dynamics and to make important decisions in terms of how this restructuring is going on. So again, a bottom line right now is there is this total restructuring going on. This last month of April, Sun squaring Saturn, Pluto, need for adjustments, who we are, what we're doing in a changing world, where how traditions and cultures and expectations have been for thousands of years are not really applying the same way that they have. And our even given government and institutions are also on the verge of tremendous change. And so there's this recoursing. And now the Sun is entering a trine with that Saturn-Pluto, mid-May, the 11th to the 13th, and there's opportunity to slow down and find the pace, find that timing, so there can be a healthy balance between what's going on in the inside, what we value and what we treasure, the warmth, the enjoyment, the connection to nature, what it is that we really value, what it is that really gives us a sense of connection to life, what really makes us filled up, what really makes us feel stable, makes us feel centered, makes us feel spacious. These are all the Taurus key words. And we're having to balance, well, what are my values, what are my needs with the world and all of these changes? And there is a beautiful gift with this new moon in Taurus, not only trine to that Saturn-Pluto, but in a crescent phase sextile to Neptune, which is saying the resources are available to us. If we are willing to slow down and tune in, even if that requires going against the grain of society, tradition, and other people's perspectives. And that's where this need for balance and this creative dynamic is allowing to shape our creative output, shape what we're sharing and doing in the world, so we can honor our own individual desires without settling for what really works or settling for what makes us feel imprisoned or dead inside. And in our willingness to slow down and tune in, it is almost as if we've been sitting on a treasure chest the whole time. This Saturn-Pluto conjunction is the deconstruction of all of these societal clutter, distractions, interferences to do with a disembodied and insane, unhealthy world. And by regaining a healthy perspective, coming back into our body, our senses through a process of simplification and reduction and returning to nature and returning to the natural rhythms and cycles that are simple and self-evident, that treasure chest we're already seated upon becomes effortlessly exposed. That's the beauty of this new moon. May 4th, this whole next week, we are sowing this seed for the new moon. The new moon is a conjunction between the sun and the moon. Any conjunction is a period of raw potential. When the seed is being sown, we want to fertilize that earth. We want to make that seed be as comfortable and capable of growing at its own pace, at its own time, in its own natural flow into what can become an abundant and rich plant. Now, before any new moon in particular, it's an important time of resetting, letting go, letting the old month, the old lunar cycle dissolve, and this new intention for embodiment, for peace, for stability, for interconnection with nature, for a slowing enjoyment of our body and senses. Taurus is our body, is our temple. The earth is a paradise, and life doesn't have to be difficult. It is easy, and we've only overcomplicated things in this particular day and age. Now again, Mercury then Venus are going to enter that square to Saturn and Pluto the first couple weeks of May, and then particularly when Venus enters Taurus, her own sign of the earth, beauty, femininity, sensuality. Mid-May, things can really start to slow down, come in, and recenter itself. The beginning of May, it's almost like this anticipation for that slowing down, and the beginning of the planning stages. For example, the next several days, Mercury is coming into a square to that Saturn-Pluto. The 1st to the 2nd, that's Wednesday to Thursday of this week. And that Mercury in Aries has to make important decisions. Okay, what do we need to do? How are we going to plan these structures? There is this creative dynamic of how can we be free? How can we meet all of our different needs or these different interests like Mars and Gemini, and this mutual reception with Mercury is like, I want that, I want to do that, I'm interested in that club, I'm interested in that hobby, I want to talk about this, I want to share this, I want to visit these people. Okay, so we have to make decisions. We may not be able to do anything. There is this hierarchical planning. And there is a need to be flexible because Mercury square to Saturn and Pluto can be very scrutinizing, very heavy, and very full of pressure, okay? So if this is one of those dynamics where it's like, okay, we're going to lock ourselves in our den until we have the schedule figured out and we have everything planned and the work is done, we don't want to force ourselves in that type of claustrophobic, pressureful container. Like forcing a square peg through the round hole. We got to find out what's going to work. We got to figure it out now. How am I going to be free, plan my vacations, okay? And how am I going to pay the bills? It's just like, okay, take some time. Take some time to settle down and slow down and tune in and remember the parts and parcels that we're working with. Remember the resources that are available to us. We're probably not even aware of the real situation if we're continuing to go at this breakneck space, which can lead to a breakdown itself, or getting ill, or getting stressed out, or having panic attacks, so on and so forth. Now, Mercury is going to transit into Taurus Monday the 6th and then pass Uranus on Wednesday the 8th. This is going to bring a shift again into Taurus, the Earth, simplification, reductionist. Mercury joining Uranus on the 8th is going to be this thinking ahead. How can we simplify? How can we make things easier? And you know what? There are beautiful opportunities with this Uranus and Taurus. I've heard so many astrologers and people interested in astrology have so much fear projected to this transit because, oh, Uranus and Taurus is so unstable. And the way we've been earning money and being self-resourceful is likely to change. Good. Uranus and Taurus can bring so many improvements in terms of how we're earning money, in terms of how we're feeling connected to our body, and being able to be sovereign, self-resourceful people capable of bringing in space and peace into our life. Uranus and Taurus is about reinventing how. How can we simplify? How can we reduce? How can we earn money more simply, more easily? And so there's this creative process that's going down, but again, the key is in that simplifying and that reducing. Now, Venus enters that square to Saturn, Pluto, Tuesday to Thursday, the 7th to the 9th. And again, there's this real redirection and recoursing, and in particular, it's going to be playing out through relationships. Venus joins asteroid Vesta, the planet of focus and self-autonomy. Venus Vesta in Aries is my sexuality, my values, what's exciting to me, what I can focus on, my gifts, my resources, is forming an opposition to Pallas Athena, the goddess of wisdom in Libra, May 1st to 2nd, this next week. Pallas Athena in Libra is the brilliant collaboration and sharing, and how are we going to share our own values and dreams through our mind, our intellect, our words in creative and collaborative ways. And then that Venus Vesta says, but I need my space, I need my time, I need freedom. All of these planets transiting Aries is this balance between freedom and obligation, expectation, coming from our families, relationship, money needs, survival needs, and the current situation in our day and age. How are we functioning in this greater mechanism, this greater machine, this greater structure of society and the world without losing ourselves, without losing our soul? And that's why this Taurus medicine is just so important here, because this is the solution. But what is challenging here is sometimes, I should say many times, very often, we don't want to settle for what actually may be easy or slower, because there's not always a solution or an answer that's like pulling a rabbit out of a hat, you know. It's like having everything figured out the rest of our life, what we're going to do, how we're going to earn our money, our family, our livelihood, our house, our situation, and have it all together and figured out. That is this unrealistic societal pressure and expectation, these traditional values that must change. It cannot be like that. It's not realistic to have those quick fixes, those easy wins, those solutions where just, I need to say this prayer, Hail Mary, and then all of my sins are forgiven and everything comes together. Life is not like that. Sometimes the more difficult advice to hear, which is the more practical advice, is just chill out. Just slow down. It's not actually the biggest deal in the world. That Saturn-Pluto conjunction is making it seem like it, but even Saturn stationing retrograde right now has this theme, this experience of, nah, let's not play the game anymore. Let's not overextend anymore. Let's not try to keep up with these silly rat races anymore, because it just kills me. It sucks my soul, and I would rather close the shop for a day and maybe bring in a few less pennies at the end of the month. I get to take that time to look at the blue sky, smell the roses in its much more infinitely valuable medicinal qualities in terms of how that fills us up and gives us redirection. I cannot even begin to explain how insane our collective disease is and how deep this conditioning goes for all of us. We do not give ourselves the easier solutions because we have this deep conditioned guilt that it should be harder, or we should have it all figured out, or we should be doing all the work ourselves. For example, if I'm feeling bad, what's the quick solution that's going to let me get back on my feet, back to my 9-to-5 job so I can make that paycheck and send my kids to college, because that's what being a good parent is. These are the programs that are running all the time unconsciously, and we just don't get how much we step on our own toes in this regard. If you're sick, be sick. Don't run to the doctor and get a prescription to convince your brain and your nervous system that you feel better when your body, your senses, and your comfort feels like being dragged over broken glass. You're killing yourself. You're not doing yourself any favors by running a ship into the ground. And yet we never really feel permission to give this to ourselves. And I see this personally as a prejudice against the sign of Taurus, a prejudice which has existed since the historical downfall of Egypt and Babylon, where all of a sudden that feminine sensuality and that abundance and that cornucopia and that sexuality and the Babylon prostitution, and yes, these cultures got distorted and needed to change, but as they were destroyed, those values and the wisdom and the treasure of Taurus, our connection to our body, our connection to slowing down, self-resourcefulness. Taurus gets called selfish. Oh, you're taking the day off? How selfish. Oh, you're slowing down? How lazy. Oh, you're buying something for yourself to enjoy and comfort your senses and to have a little bit of pleasure in your life? How self-indulgent. We're killing ourselves. In fact, this killing off of the feminine has already largely taken place. Hence, the guilt exists. Oh, I shouldn't take the day off. Oh, that is self-indulgent. I don't really have the money to afford this nice meal that's going to make my consciousness radically more improved. I don't really feel that that's realistic. That would be selfish. That would be mean. This guilt is unnatural. It's not coming from God, nature, spirituality. It's coming from man-made bullshit, which is killing us. It is the deception of the machine, the expectation that we're all supposed to be cogs and wheels and robots, and that we can pull that off. No, we can't. People die giving themselves to the machine that is running the whole species and Earth into the ground. So no, this new moon in Taurus is the opportunity for us to prove to ourselves what happens when we allow ourselves to break the mold, slow down, tune in, get our feet on the earth, and remember what life actually is by actually giving ourselves the opportunity to make touch with it. And Taurus rules the senses. It rules touch. It rules sensuality. Through Taurus, through Venus, you make contact with life. Sensuality is not a bad thing. Sense indulgence, material sense enjoyment is not a negative or bad thing. It is our way of connecting with the divine feminine and directly experiencing the taste, the flavor of life, which is not merely for our own disassociated indulgence. It's the opposite. It's in order to understand what life is in fact all about. So there's a major gift and a major treasure with this new moon in Taurus coming up May 4th. And be sure to slow down, tune in, and sow this seed in the earth with plenty of care, water, sunshine, and love. This new moon says these spiritual resources provided internally to connect with one's inner values are provided. They are there. True beauty, true provision, true safety and space are being provided. Should we give ourselves the opportunity to slow down, tune in, and remember that the divine feminine, the earth, is still here. It is a living, conscious being. She doesn't want us to be selling our soul as if that's what would be healthier to her. This is about putting forth a steady and consistent effort. Yes, we're not just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're not just running to the abandoned island. We're not copping out of the world and society. That sun, moon, in a trine to Saturn, Pluto is about working within the world, working within society, while simultaneously honoring our physical needs, our values, and our own needs for sense enjoyment, to slow down and connect, and how to bridge them together. We can and will have those resources provided to us if we set our compass on that noble endeavor, which is also to set our compass to be a part of the wave of souls that are aligning back with nature. Do you think nature is going to conspire with or against you if you're aligning with nature and the natural rhythms and flows of life? Prove it to yourself. Don't just take my word for it. This is about providing growth and opportunities for a change of pace to honor the natural beauty of life and nature, to slow down enough to recognize our purpose. Yes, you have to slow down enough to recognize your purpose. We have to remember the resources that are available to us only by slowing down, tuning in, and allowing our senses to open up and form that direct contact with life. Effectively, we can open new directions and possibilities for living by being true to our inner values. That is our inner treasure. The gifts that we're sharing are the gifts that we are born with, that we are passionate about, that we're excited to share. Not the things that our world and parents told us that we had to sell our soul to keep up with. That's how we kill ourselves, and that's also how we fight against the grain of nature and end up contributing less back to the world anyways. Be more selfish. It can pay off by giving back to the world more without even having to try this next month of May. Okay? So be true to your inner treasures and do not settle for that cheap and kitschy taste of society. What we see on the internet, what we see in movies, oh, this is what's supposed to be enjoyable. Oh, this is what's supposed to be exciting, is cheap. It's tasteless. It's almost like immature and grimy and gross. It's just like, what do you think it means to be a human being? You have lost all sense with your humanity if we're only tuning into that kitsch, that tasteless crap coming from our current society and world, which has lost its connection and its divine root in nature. The truth is, we are seeing the value of our investments at this time. Taurus is about value. It's about what is valuable. Money is subjective. Money is different depending on where you are, depending on how you see money, depending on how you use money. Can be anything, but anything can be value. Money is energy exchange. The principle of exchange is a Venus function, how we're giving and how we're taking. That exchange of abundance, of energy, of resources is Venus. And yet how that exchange is taking place, are we drawing forth the water from the well? Are we bringing that treasure up from the surface? And we're seeing, have we invested into what may have been a scam or that cheap, kitschy, billboard from society? This is what you're supposed to do. This is what your family is supposed to look like. Those cheap, kitschy beauty standards, for example, from Cosmo magazine. You're supposed to look like a toothpick. Your lips and your breasts are supposed to be inflated to look like, an inflatable balloon. This is a distortion of nature, okay, that loses the real taste, the real value, the real beauty is what is natural. By not applying those chemicals, those pharmaceutical quick fixes, those Tylenols, those cover-ups, those distractions. The culture, the kitsch, is a distraction from that real value, that real depth. Saturn is stationing exactly the same degree as the moon's south node, 20 degrees Capricorn, the last 2 days of April. It's a very powerful karmic aspect. Karma has to do with action and reaction, consequences due to decisions. It's not this distorted, superficial morality, demons and angels and good people and bad people, which becomes a very fast, delusional way of misleading what actually happens on the earth. It's about decisions, it's about free will, it's about choices, and it's about the consequences of our decisions, our choices, and what we align with. That Saturn stationing on the South Node is seeing what we've invested in. Has it been a worthwhile investment? And we've been talking about how this can be a rude awakening for many souls. That Saturn stationing retrograde can become highly rebellious. Well, then you know what? Screw this. Screw the tradition. Screw the old structures. Screw what I've been doing. Screw the government. Screw society. Screw my parents. Screw my bosses. Okay? Saturn retrograde can want to flip the bird. good. We want to harness this energy. We want to use it constructively. And the key is to therefore not take it overly seriously, right? We're not going to burn down our place of business. We're not going to disconnect ourselves from our family unless it's an abusive situation, of course, in which case we are really required to for our own well-being. Taurus, self-resourcefulness, to take care of ourselves from the inside out. How much are we depending on other people can be a part of this investment. How much have we overly invested in structures, machines, or personalities that are not really providing a sense of self-security, self-safety, or really being aligned with our own values in a way to create that beautiful container, that paradise, that bubble that we want to live in. Now, the Saturn stationing retrograde means let's apply these changes, let's test those social obligations, let's change them, let's do the revolutionary work. That Saturn was about to pass Pluto, is now rolling retrograde, which is saying, you know what? This paradigm shift that we've been gearing up to and we've been seeing it, okay, we have to plan it out. We need tact. We need, a battle plan. Saturn is the general. The general doesn't send the army out in a wild, spontaneous, now go get them and see what happens type of way. We're guaranteed to lose that battle in that sense. So tact. Care. We're going to approach this way. We'll explore the battlefield first. We'll measure it out. The point with Saturn retrograde is we can't rebel to the point, and I've seen people do this, where it's like, the credit card company's coming after me. It's an evil corporate machine, so I'm not going to pay my debts. And then those debts grow, and the situation doesn't improve. Okay? How rather can we function within the credit card debt while we simultaneously know that it's not exactly real? It's not like we're not able to afford things. It's not like we don't have all the resources we need. That's this new moon. This new moon is reminding the whole of humanity we have all the resources that we need to take care of every human being already born on the planet. That's a huge deal considered how overpopulated our species currently is, and yet it's true. So we can remember that. We are changing the structure in a way that works. That doesn't mean that we run away from structure at all, which tends to make things work less, okay? So, oftentimes when people even come for readings, sometimes there's that pressure. I need to have this figured out now. I need to make a decision today. I want you, Timothy, to pull a rabbit out of a hat for me. And so often when this approach happens in whatever way we're trying to get to that solution, it's like we have to just slow down, smell the roses as we ponder these decisions. We may not have the answer served to us on a silver platter. So what does the person who is considering these important decisions in life, how are we going to bring in these money, these resources, do our teaching, do our sharing, share the gifts and the resources that we embody as Taurus, our inherent value and the recognition of it? Well, the critical thinker, the ponderer, is usually seen with their corncob pipe. Just have a few puffs at that pipe. The corncob pipe is a sensually enjoyable activity. And so while you're pondering, get your feet on the grass. Go on a nice walk. If you have to make an important business decision, if you've got to figure out something in your relationship, go sit in the grass. Go take a nice nap and look up at the sky. A nice orgasm, a good self-enjoyment session, a nice meal, a good snack. Allow yourself to really slow down, enjoy that corncob pipe, get your feet on the earth, start to walk down that stream, hear the babbling brook in your ears, smell the earth, smell the trees, fill your body, fill your lungs as your feet are moving through the cold stream, and that stream is moving through your toes, and your toes are stepping through the mud and on the stones, and before you recognize recognize it as you're contemplating these questions. How can I make my life more self-sufficient, more enjoyable, more relaxed? That word relaxation is the key to our creative genius, the key to our innovative decision-making. If only the world and society taught us how to relax. If only we knew how that was possible to accomplish that state of mind, that conscious being where we are in tune with life and reality, and those beautiful gifts and resources come to us effortlessly when we allow ourselves to be in tune, we allow ourselves to relax. And we're stepping on the stones and we're feeling our way forward, and before long we realize that our feet in the stream, we've been walking upon gems. Yes, we have just struck a gold. We just went on a walk and there it is, the eureka moment, the great discovery. That treasure which was just beneath our feet was there all along. Allow yourself to prove what it means to be a human being. Allow yourself to remember what life in nature is all about. There are many of us who have never even been given a breath of this opportunity throughout decades of our life. We have to return to nature, what is small, what is easy, what is simple. That is Uranus transiting Taurus this next decade. That's the creative, the innovative discoveries. We cannot always pull a rabbit out of a hat. But if we do not expect that, and if we do not carry that on our shoulders, and if we allow ourselves to process, if we allow ourselves to move, if we allow ourselves to breathe, we may discover that we don't even need someone to pull a rabbit out of a hat for us. There may be an easier, simpler solution or decision to be made. And so, allow yourself this gift of life, this gift of spirit, this gift of the divine feminine. Because when we align with the resurging divine feminine, when we align with the cycles, the movements of nature, nature conspires with us rather than against us. And this is not something we just need to believe on blind faith or positively manifest by reading the books. Tune in and find that resource and that connection within yourself. And don't just take my word for it. May it be a part of your own process of self-discovery. And so I'm wishing you absolutely all the best in this endeavor. Again, raffle. 2 days left in the raffle. Speaking of Taurus and all things valuable, I'm giving away astrology readings, membership into my Patreon community. You can choose a selection of any of the workshops I've been given. You can win a workshop from me. Most of those workshops aren't currently in my store yet. So we're trying to increase the value from Rasa Lila Healing as well. I am also trying to recourse and slow down so I can provide more value and more resources. And so thanks again for the opportunity to share this information, to be able to play the message delivery mailman, do this work that's so exciting and so valuable and so enjoyable and fulfilling to myself. And I hope in some way, shape, or form that taste and enjoyment can also be shared with yourself. And again, thank you to those souls who have inspired and uplifted my life in this exchange of the treasures that we recognize in our hearts and are therefore capable of offering as a gift back to the world simply by honoring our own nature and who we are.